15-minute cities. Don't know what you think. Personally, I dislike. But anyway, this was a meeting in Falkirk about a 20-minute neighbourhood. Now, I can assume that, and this is just purely on assumption, that if you have an area which has very limited shopping and stuff like that, they may expand the area which they'll call your area, and they don't want you to go outside of that area. Now, this is all in the planning at the moment. Now, up in Scotland, they decided that they would have a meeting to see how the locals thought about it. Now, it's funny because a Conservative and a Labour councillor attended with great enthusiasm for this, by the way, and for some reason, they thought that the public would also be enthusiastic. This goes to bolster up the opinion of many like myself that people in positions of any sort of power, take for instance local councillors, MPs, people like that, have no clue exactly how the people they serve think and what they feel and what they really want. Maybe some of them actually do, but they don't care. But there are many that are such utterly deluded idiots that believe they think it, so everybody else must think it. And when you get inside the London bubble, much is the case that many of them all sing off the same hymn sheet because many of them inside that area are extreme left. And they're all on board with this green agenda because it makes them look good. And it also fills their pockets. But that's another story and probably another video. But let's just get to this. It says, right, so the title says, calls for councillors to be executed, applauded at a community meeting. And it restates that here. A call for councillors to be executed with greeted with applause at a public meeting held to discuss controversial 20-minute neighbourhood plans in Falkirk. Now, more than 140 people attended the Bauhaus Community Centre on Friday evening for the event, which has been billed as a full and frank discussion of the council's strategy to reduce private car usage. This always goes back to the bloke that looks like that eagle off the Muppets, and it'll come to be Klaus Schwab, where he says, you'll have nothing and you'll be happy, except we'll have nothing and be happy, and you'll have everything and be happy. This sounds a lot like socialism to me, but let's move on. In their bid to hit this green agenda, which you are all made to feel extremely guilty about, that the end of the world is nigh because you're driving a car, or the end of the world is nigh because you're living in a building that's been upstanding there for 150 years and it now doesn't meet new building regulations. So what will happen as we go forward, they'll bully you into either getting an electric car or just not having one, preferably not having one. And with regards to the house, what they'll do, and I've seen plans for this within the European Union, is they'll bring about laws saying that your house has to meet with a certain green rating like your fridge does. Or, you know, your fridge has an energy rating. Well, your house will have an energy loss rating or heat loss rating or whatever you want to call it. And basically, if your house is not brought within these tolerances, I assume what they'll do is fine you. It's something like that was talked about. So to put the house, an average 3-bedroom house, maybe within the standards, it's over 100 grand. And not everybody has 100 spare grand kicking around. So what they will do is they'll fine you ongoing until such time as you either run out of money, go bankrupt, and you have to give up the house, or you buy into a plan which they'll more than likely make up, which means they take the house off you and you live in it, and they'll do the work, but then they'll knock the work back ages because they've got your house now. So anyway, it says here in this particular meeting, but things became so heated that the group who had actively promoted the evening withdrew their support for the organisers in disgust. This is interesting. During, now, by the way, I'm not on board with all this 5G shite, all right, just saying. But it said, during the event, councillors were also accused of genocide for allowing the introduction of 5G masts, despite the fact that the decision was not made by local members. Okay. Falkirk District Action Group, FDAG, founder member Sharon Keane said she was so shocked by the behaviour at the meeting that her group has withdrawn support from Falkirk Unbound. I'm assuming Falkirk Unbound were the people that were holding the meeting or whatever. Anyway, she said, I wouldn't call it a meeting. It was a protest. I was absolutely disgusted at the way the councillors were treated. They were thrown to the wolves. Well, if you do bad things and they affect the locals badly, you are to be held to account. This is probably new in your concept because for the last 30 or 40 years, our politicians have said they're going to do something, usually good, we vote them in. And then what actually they do is all bad stuff and nothing ever happens. Nothing comes of it. And if they particularly shit on the people that they represent, they usually get, I don't know, some sort of reward from the state. So there you go. Anyway, Sharon said the FDAG would continue to seek answers around the 20-minute neighbourhoods and campaign on other issues, but they will no longer work with Falkirk Unbound. Labour councillor Sobian, obviously would be, Patterson, and Conservative James Bundy, any relation, accepted the invitation to attend as they were keen to hear people's views. But Councillor Patterson said she was surprised when she was shouted down and called a fascist for her views. Somebody at that meeting hit the nail on the head, because Labour are no longer about the people. They're about keeping the people quiet and doing exactly what it is that they want them to do. I mean, Hope Not Hate. Hope Not Hate and other such organisations surrounding themselves from the core of Labour are, by their very definition, fascist. But hey-ho, what do I know? Anyway, she said there absolutely is an appetite to know more about the 20-minute neighbourhoods because there are still a lot of unknowns. I was optimistic about the meeting, but disappointed at how things went. You mean it didn't go your way? And at the level of aggression that was unchallenged. Hang on a second. You want to basically put these people in a prison and you want them to thank you for it? That shows just how blitheringly off your head you are and how completely incapable you are to represent anybody in that area. My suggestion would be go into vegan activism or something like that. That would suit you. Anyway, oh, there we go. She added, and here's the one they always pull out, don't they? This is the trump card that Labour always pull out when they're getting a little bit of aggression. She added, given what happened to Joe Cox and David Ames MP, who were killed while carrying out public duties, threats of violence are not acceptable. Well, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, this is going to happen more and more because the more and more you take people's freedoms away, the more and more you tax people, the more and more you stop people from being listened to, being able to say what they want, protest, etc. The more you make people's life inevitably more miserable, the more you destroy people's future and their kids' future, they're going to have bad feelings towards you. And there are some people who are more extreme than others, okay? You have to worry about these people. I would be if I was you. Now, I'm not saying that threats of violence is acceptable. No, I wouldn't dream of it. We're on YouTube. You can't say that, and I don't. What I'm simply saying is you can't control everybody, and you are going to piss people off to the level where they will take matters into their own hands. Now, in the future, I see all MPs needing a lot of security, because if they're going to continue to shit on people, people are going to want to get their own back. This is nature. If you go back to history, say, for instance, like the French Revolution, what they did there, if you go back to other times when MPs or people who served, go back further to what they did to kings and queens and stuff like that. When the people had enough, they resort to violence because there's nothing else. When you will not hear them, when words will not work anymore, they are left with nothing else but acts of rebellion and violence. This is what you're pushing them to. I would suggest that you revisit your stupidity thoughts and go, that is a bad one, push that aside. How's about we do away with all this 15-minute bollocks and we stop taxing the living daylights out of people who are just trying to earn a day's living? Because when you go to London, and this is something I've talked about, the CCTV, it is the most camered city in the world as far as I'm aware. And at the moment, there are people actively out there redressing this because why should they be paying to move around their city? It's their city. It's not yours, okay? You're there as a public servant to deal with the day-to-day acts of office. You are not there to be God. You are not there to decide what and where and how people can exist, okay? In so much as this land is all of ours. It isn't yours to dice up and decide who can go where. It doesn't work like that. Now, these people who have lived in London all their life and been told now that they now can't move about in the ways they used to aren't going to be happy with you for obvious reasons. So anyway, it just goes like this. She said that the examples aren't happy, and Joe Cox and all that. And there are some grey areas around the Joe Cox thing. The man they accused of it, if you look in, there was an investigation into it, and he was said that he couldn't have done it. But anyway, he got fitted up, and there it is. Where are we? Not acceptable. There are examples of danger of that kind of rhetoric. It shouldn't be taken lightly and it should be challenged. Councillor Bundy said, when the active travel strategy was being discussed by council, I raised concerns about the council adopting anti-car rhetoric, and I stand by that. Well, if he stands by that, he needs to keep his finger pulled well and truly out and keep the pressure on. Now, if he's seen to be doing the right thing, the public aren't going to go after him. They're going to go after the people who support this. And that's just natural. That's just what's going to happen. And I mean, these councillors and these MPs have had it their way for so long, but they really are getting to a point where they're massively over the top. And people are going to hate them. And I hate them. And I have to say this, I wouldn't endorse anything illegal to them. However, it's got to the point now, just speaking to them, you can be prosecuted to if they say that you did it in an aggressive manner. I know people that have called names to politicians and ended up meeting the long end of the law and got prosecuted for it. And it's bollocks. These people believe they're in a world where they're untouchable and they can do whatever it is that they like, and I just can't stand them. Anyway, what has it said? Mr. Tunnicliffe, what a name, said, unfortunately, this wasn't an open forum to hear all views we intended it to be, and it certainly wasn't any of the organisation's intentions or, I believe, our fault that 2 or 3 of those that attended simply couldn't seem to control what they said or the way they came across. No, what it is, mate, is people are now having the minerals to stand up and just shout over you, because otherwise they don't get to say anything, and you say your bit and that's it, it's all done, and then everybody thinks you agree. So I truly agree with people shouting over the top of you, letting all the others in the room know that what they're thinking, they're not on their own, all right, and get it out. Mate, these people have to reconsider their position, because at the end of the day, what they're doing to London and the cities, they will do everywhere, all over the UK. And all of these people now that have decided to get a bit lively and attack all these cameras, because it isn't just one person, there are hundreds of them. And every time people get to see there's a camera gone up there and all of these other people got away with, they're gonna think it's a sport. And there's not going to be enough maintenance people out there to keep these cameras working. And what's going to happen is the greedy bastards that are robbing the motorist out there will end up not being able to rob them so much. And that makes me happy. Just saying. While I don't endorse criminality, I am happy that the criminals in Westminster and other areas like that are not able to rob at will like they were before. Let's put it that way. So anyway, that was pretty much the most of it. I would have loved to have seen these faces of these people who were sat on their bench thinking that everybody was going to suck up to them and say what a great idea, and they got fucking slaughtered. And hats off to the people that went to that meeting and did that. But calling for the execution, a bit strong, but I can see that happening a lot more in the future. Anyway, my doorbell's gone, so I'm going to chip off. See you in a bit.